And let me just see if we have any participants.
Jody Tim.
Hey, Jody, I'm going to allow you to talk as an attendee and move you over to a panelist just to make sure you can participate with us.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. All good. It seems like I can leave you.
These are two-sided.
Leave you here for now. Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry.
My favorite. I love 2x2.
Oh, when did you get back?
And then
Last week.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
So you got your land legs back under
yeah,
you?
it took a while. It took longer than I expected.
Really?
Where's your boat? It lives up in the San Juans in Washington.
Oh,
So
nice.
is this not the first time that you used it up there like this? It's, we've been up for just a few days on a load at a time, but we've never done a 2-month trip, so. It's only a big difference, we learned.
Well, while we're at it, why don't we all do a round of introductions? I'll start. My name is Sarah Margulies, and I am the council member that's the liaison for our Climate Action Forum. So welcome, everybody, to our October 8th meeting. And I'll turn it over to you.
there, my name's Shannon O'Hare. I'm the Assistant City Manager for the City of Larkspur, and I'm the staffer for the Climate Action Forum.
And we're very glad about that. David Muller with Larkspur Planning.
Robin Muller, I live in Larkspur.
Reed Baxter, I also live in Larkspur, GM for Bon Air.
And Katie Straub Hutton, also live in Larkspur.
Thank you, guys. And online, do you want to give us a quick introduction?
Well, I'll say hello. I'm Jody Timms. I'm the chair of the Fairfax Climate Action Committee and just listening in.
Thanks, Jody. Anybody else online?
Believe just Jody and then me for presentation
Okay.
purposes.
Okay, I can't see. All right, I suppose I can look behind me, but I wasn't thinking about that. Okay, great. Well, welcome everybody and thank you for joining us this evening. Our first order of business is I was going to just give you a very quick update on some things that I'm doing. Just want to bring to the attention of our Climate Action Forum that on the 19th of October, Resilient Neighborhoods is celebrating its 15th anniversary. There will be an event, and I have been asked to speak about running for council and the overlap between my commitment to the environment and wanting to reduce my carbon footprint and how that's impacting the work I'm doing and my decision to run for council. So hopefully if you're don't have anything going on and you'd like to join, please join us on the 19th. And then the other thing is that this today started the Cal Cities Annual Expo, and it goes through Friday, and it's a conference for elected city staff. It's happening in Long Beach, and I am going to leave bright and early tomorrow morning, and I will be down there through Friday, and I'm hoping to attend some sessions. One that I hope to find some more information and ammunition from is Advancing Municipal Climate Action Through Partnership. So I'm going to sit in on that. There's some other things that pertain to what we're doing here in Larkspur, but not necessarily to this Climate Action Forum. So I hope to report back on my adventures down in Long Beach at our next forum. Yeah. So that's it from me for now, and I'm going to turn it over to Shannon so she can talk about what's happening on the staff level with regards to MCEP.
Yeah, and quickly, we also added an item at Councilmember Margulies' request that we just do a brief staff summary of CAF actions from our previous meeting for folks. So, you know, for folks who don't hit all of our meetings, what we did last time. This will actually, I will be talking about this a little bit more at length in the update for the CALGreen Building Electrification Code standards. That was our main agenda item last time. We were in the process of researching in light of AB 306 what the city could do to pass our own building reach codes related to electrification and other sustainability climate goals. There were a couple of other things on the agenda that we were so busy we did not get time to fully explore, which we've added to this agenda. So thank you all for coming. But the other item there that I do want to encourage folks, and I hope he speaks again, is Barry Vesser from the Climate Center gave a presentation about all of the work they do and really what's happening at the state level. And he has a wealth of knowledge that although city staff, we read digests, we do our best, et cetera, we are not in Sacramento working at that level. We try to focus on our community and then see how Sacramento impacts us or see how we might want to work with partners at the state level. But that was a great presentation and it's available online for anybody who would like to see it. So one of the goals of the forum is that there would be people besides staff talking who could share their expertise. So it was very exciting that at one of our first meetings, we got somebody who stepped up.
Yeah, Jen, sorry to interrupt. I was just gonna say the action item, follow-up items from the last meeting are right here on the agenda, because we're gonna
Mhm.
pass the minutes for it. Did you have them listed out or you don't? Do you want me to just sort of bring them up? Cause it's there.
We can bring them up now. That's fine.
Yeah, okay. So one was for you to follow up on zero waste Marin certification opportunities. And that was regarding, it was really more my curiosity because I had seen at the school that they were gonna get a platinum level.
Yes, okay, so yes, I
certification.
do have an update for that. So that program is specifically for schools.
Okay,
There are some, I don't want, adjacent programs that we can also get through the county, through Zero Waste Marin to be a green business. Although we're not a business, we're a government agency, we're not for profit people. But to evaluate some of our sites for both ways we can improve and then get certified as green.
okay.
So there are some good opportunities there. We think that we're gonna start with our current recreation offices because it's very modest and we can get our sea legs and learn the process that way. And we have recently-ish joined recreation coordinator, which is we haven't had for a while. So that's one of his projects that he'll be working on into the new year to do that. And then when the library moves and we have our new beautiful library building, when they open up, we'll likely be exploring to see if there's any programs where we could get some certifications there. There's already we're starting from scratch there, so we have a lot of best practices that as we were going through the project, we were able to do because we're building it from the ground up. And then over time, it's likely for people who've been following city news that once the library leaves, the bottom floor of City Hall will change in some form. In the immediate, that will be pretty modest, but there will likely be some staff offices, workspaces that move there. That's another opportunity where we're changing. We'll just be changing the way we're set up and it'll be an opportunity to certify. This is not any official program, but we had our long Marin tenured community development director, Elise Simonian, retired, well-deserved. And at her retirement party, one of the things we realized is we had all compostable, if it was disposable, compostable foodware, etc., but that we didn't have all of the correct green garbage set up for the amount of food there was, etc. So that's not a certification, but staff immediately changed that process to make sure that going forward, there's a checklist so that we have all our P's and Q's in order. So every time we do something, we do try to take an opportunity to see, even if it's small, to make sure that we increase our sustainability climate goals.
Thank you. Thanks, Shannon. Okay, the second item was continue outreach on CALGreen and reach code adoption ahead of August 20 council meeting, so that
Was my entire life.
yes,
Lots
exactly.
of
And
that.
you're gonna
That was
report
great.
an
Yes.
update on that anyway coming
Absolutely.
up. We did share out the Climate Center presentation slides and links. They're available on our sustainability page, and that was the Barry Besser presentation that was given. And then continue development of the action plan tracker and integrate community feedback into priority setting. So we'll go into that as part of our agenda items. We did receive some submissions from some of our members, and we'll review that in a later agenda item. And then track implementation of electric landscaping equipment and prepare community education on regulations. So that one, I'm not sure, is that falling under our landscaping agenda item? Okay.
Yes, and there's been no, although that was the direction, there's been no movable action in terms of anything that's been implemented from that last meeting to this meeting.
Okay,
Staff has prioritized the electrification codes as well as waiting for this item going
okay,
forward, so.
all right, so that closes out the updates on the action items from our previous CAF meeting.
Yep,
Thanks, Shannon.
and then just a couple of other quick updates. the MCEP update, the main agenda item at our last meeting was we were just talking about a lot of legislation was passed. Sacramento was wrapping up a lot of their processes. So there was some information sharing about items that might be of interest to our sustainability coordinators and other staff members who are assigned to climate, and what we might want to research, what resources there are to both, look on our own for the impacts of this and how we could share that with the community, with our communities. So that's the MCEP update. The ZeroWaste Marin update, I talked about it at the last meeting, but since then we actually met with ZeroWaste Marin staff, and they have a fellow whose main project will be evaluating, or one of their main projects, they might be doing a whole lot more, but main project working with us is that they said if we're interested, they're happy to evaluate our encroachment permit processes, any event permit processes we have, and look at how we could incorporate best practices, voluntary checklists, and then if we wanted to take it and run with it at some point, any requirements we're allowed to impose to have sustainable events. So.
What do encroachment processes have to do with zero waste?
Well, so that's a great question. Sometimes nothing, right? If you want an encroachment because you're fixing a sewer lateral, maybe not much. But if it's an encroachment permit, depending on how each city does it, if it's related to a block party, right? That you get an encroachment permit, and some, I don't want to speak for all of my colleagues and how they do things in other cities, but the encroachment permit might be the thing that's signed off that says you have to have everything in order, right? So the encroachment permit is really how you plan your entire event. So they just wanted to see, what do your current forms look like and what do you have in them? For Larkspur, actually, it's very public works, or if you need to talk to fire or police, that's how our encroachment permits look. And then there's a separate kind of event process that if you need to have a solid waste or recycling plan, et cetera, ours aren't all together, but they wanted to make sure they look at it because people do business a little bit differently.
Right.
Yeah. So they'll be working on that over the next couple months and then share with us. And I'm excited to see what everyone's doing, what we can implement ourselves. And then the other nice thing is that the Zero Waste Marin staff will have some really actionable, practical feedback that we can do that say, this works, right? Rather than trying to set something up and have a lot of bumps in the road to say that, there's proof of concept here. So very excited about that.
Yeah.
Are there any questions from anybody before I move on to what I suspect might be the longest part of my staff update, the most robust part of it?
Reed has a question.
Yeah.
I was curious on the event permitting, I think we talked about this at Parks and Rec, where it's like in process. Any thoughts on when that's gonna come to fruition?
So that's a separate, so for anyone who's listening, so I should say, Reed is one of our commissioners, one of our Parks and Rec commissioners. So the Parks and Recreation, the recreation staff is working with our Parks and Recreation Commission to come up with a formalized process for events, which is its own. I know that it is in process and will be at a future meeting. This is separate.
Okay.
And actually will go to even a much more modest level than a big event. One of the things for the having a zero waste plan for an event might be if you want to do a picnic table rental with us, that we give you paperwork and have you sign a checklist. And if there's a staff member working on site, that we pay you a friendly visit to see if you're, doing your best, or there's any way to assist to make your modest kid's birthday party or adult birthday party, whatever you want to do at our park, as sustainable as possible. Whereas I believe the discussion at the Park and Rec Commission is for larger events and larger gatherings. But we want to really focus on all levels. And we think, when I've certainly talked with our recreation staff, that some of the greatest opportunities and people who, I don't want to say have the least resources, but it might not be top of mind, or there might not be necessarily a roadmap, is some of our smaller events that can have a lot of single-use plastics, a lot of single-use trash, etc. We had a grant from, again, very generous Zero Waste Marin, to where we have lots of compostable single-use foodware, which, again, bringing plates, washing is better, but we have so much of it. We're also exploring whether there'd be an informal, if you sign up with us and you want some plates, etc., we'll just give them to you. So, we don't put the onus on you to go out and purchase your own things. And, the only barrier of entry might be that your child's really sad it's not a Paw Patrol. It's a paper plate and it's just plain,
The
but
benefit of that too is that we know they're commercially compostable.
we do. So that's
Okay.
another thing, is
a lot of them aren't, so it's good that.
folks who are clued into this or following this, some of them even say compostable everywhere but California. Which is a little bit like Prop 65, where apparently the lead in the water only gives us cancer and not everybody else. So again, the great staff at Zero Waste Marin had a list where they did all their research and said, these are not say approved vendors, but we have vetted this. And these are truly compostable, because some of things that are marketed as compostable, much like some plastics, you may or may not have the facilities in your area to compost them. Yeah.
One of the things that I like about what you were saying about addressing the small scale and the big scale consumer is that that small scale consumer probably often includes youth or
Yep.
probably small children. And the sooner they can get educated about that, the better. So I think it's a good investment to get the 4-year-olds on board.
Yep. Yeah.
Because they're going to become 40 at some point.
The goal, right?
They're also really good at pestering their parents once they get an
That's
idea.
true.
Oh, yeah.
I have heard such things.
So with that, we can move on to the city adoption of the CALGreen Building Electrification Code standards. So the update I have is that the city attempted to submit the CALGreen Tier 1 Building Code amendments that the council passed to the California Energy Commission after it was adopted by the council. The code amendments were not eligible for submission because due to incomplete materials required for submission. This is mainly due to the cost effectiveness studies required to submit to the California Energy Commission. For anyone who watched my presentation on that, I alluded to that might be an issue. We started this process under the timeline to just see how far we could get, and then figured if we couldn't submit, we would go through other avenues, but we really wanted to try to get to that October 1st deadline. Unfortunately, I even went as far as to be like, okay, if 2025, there aren't energy studies ready, hopefully 2022, if we backtrack, those will have the energy studies. Nobody in our area commissioned the full Tier 1 energy studies in 2022. All had some forms of exceptions or something bespoke. So we did not have a complete packet that we were able to submit. That being said, folks who you can commission these studies from, and the California Energy Commission has been very, very generous with staff across the state to, if we want to resubmit, and I'll get into this, under different authorities or powers we might have, that they will work with us. And because we're not under exactly the same timeline, we can ask questions ahead of time of, is this complete? Does this work, etc. So it's not a totally opaque process. So I just want to be clear with everyone that as staff's working on this, we have good partners. This is a really weird situation. And so with that, we're working with those two folks. We're working with County of Marin staff, who have electrification expertise. The consultants responsible for producing the energy efficiency studies if you don't commission your own. And then our cities and other local jurisdictions, both inside and outside Marin, to discuss future strategies and code amendments and where they're going, because a lot of jurisdictions are gearing up to use other means to try to pass reach codes and building code amendments. And so this is all still in process, but it was said at the council meeting previously. There's also an authority to amend the building codes using other means. One of them that we might pursue is the general plan update, the authority we have, and being able to go that route. There are cities that are now submitting using that, and we will be able to see if it's accepted by the Energy Commission. There's also been a lot of work done by attorneys across the state. And our staff is feeling more and more confident that that's an avenue we can move forward on. Also on that, so staff is working on evaluating, and later this week we'll begin working with internal building division consultants we have at our staff to determine the differences and breakdowns between electrification paths and options. One of the big asterisks we had when we were going to adopt Tier 1 in its entirety is we were pretty honest and said, somebody has vetted this, but we have not looked at every single thing that's in Tier 1. So, and that was a question where, again, the community was very supportive of, we're on this deadline, and could we reevaluate this and change it and maybe scale things back if they're not a right fit for our community moving forward. We now have a little bit of time to where we can work with the consultants to say, this is what tier one is, this is all of what it is. If we wanted to have certain exceptions, this is what it would mean. If there was some talk of a flex path or using flex path, this is the difference between the flex path. And that's happening, kicking off end of this week into next week. So that's another part of this process. And then just so when I'm saying this to folks, Jody, I know you're not in the room with us, but I am 8 months pregnant. So a question might be, you know, is this going to be put on hold, et cetera? The city manager is working with me on this to hand that off when I go on maternity leave. I'll probably still be checking my emails because I'm nosy. But the city manager, there will be that handoff on this process continuing. Also, for folks who might not know, where I mentioned that our community development director retired, so we're currently in process. We've interviewed folks for the community development director position. Knock on wood, I'm very confident that we'll have somebody join us. So once we'll continue this, we're not putting it on hold, but once a new staff member joins us, they will also be looped into this to provide us support.
Can we ask how long you're gonna be out?
Assuming everything goes well, right? So assuming there's no complications, et cetera, about 4 months, but I'm probably going to be taking it intermittently and coming back around a month 3 for a while to check in some things and then taking the rest of maternity
I
leave.
didn't mean to be intrusive.
That's okay. It's all on video now. It'll be nice because there's now way too much personal information about me. I've had 2 children in pretty much the dead of winter, and that's not the time to visit Ireland. So I come back and then leave again for the spring. And take the rest of my maternity leave. So also on timeline, the goal is to have this information gathered and passed forward within the next couple months, if not earlier, so we at least know what our options are, and then we'll be able to share the timeline of what would this look like, right? A lot of this that was, I don't want to say frustrating, but people were really pushing, and I appreciate it, is we have legal requirements for very good reason, that there's a first reading of an ordinance and a second reading of an ordinance, and then you submit, et cetera. We will be able to map out what this actually looks like and what our options are and how long they might take.
Okay, so I just want to be clear, because I at one point heard end of October and I thought that was really ambitious. So we're thinking maybe by end of November, we'll have the information, enough information to understand what path and if there's the next path to move forward with. And at that point, we can understand the timeline associated with public hearings. Adoption.
Yeah, and in terms of our paths, I'm actually pretty confident end of October we'll at least know the paths
Really?
and be able to knock them out. Now, the longer timeline, especially, or not longer, but what would be take a little bit longer is I think really evaluating the differences between like what is in CALGreen tier 1, right?
Mhm.
The different boxes, and then I don't want to speak for folks who commission the energy studies about how
Right.
long it would take for them to, because we're allowed to commission those studies, but how long it would take for them to get that data ready.
Okay.
Yeah.
And who pays for those studies?
So there's a couple different ways you can do it. So the way we've always done it in a lot of small jurisdictions is the PG&Es of the world, the SoCal Edisons of the world, the SoCal Gas, they pay into essentially fund these consultants, and then we can call on them free of charge
Okay.
to produce these studies for us.
Right.
Some agencies just pay their own consultants and commission their own studies. And again, these are all really qualified folks, but if you're a big agency, you may want your own consultants, and you may have a lot of in-house staff resources to where you want to be involved in the process of how that's all developing for your jurisdiction. You can also pay out of pocket,
Okay.
and have a qualified, have something, my understanding is something that, you know, passes muster for a cost effectiveness study to submit to the CEC or any other,
Okay.
and folks. Consultants are expensive, expertise is expensive, so we've always used the free option. And again, there's never really been anything that's been so time sensitive to where they weren't ready.
Right.
The folks who are free, the consultants who do this free of charge, they have like pretty much like the codes are adopted, folks say what they want, and then like they have essentially like 6-7 months process, and like clockwork every year they have it ready, and then you bring your amendments to the council or your governing body for consideration and submit it. This is again a very unique situation. So yep.
So on the CALGreen stuff, so I'd like to add a little information.
Yep.
And at least throw out a couple of things. So I've mentioned before in this forum that, I'm also involved, participate in a group, of, climate activists in the South Bay.
Mhm.
And a lot of the original action about, jurisdictions adopting reach codes happened in the South Bay.
Was it mainly San Mateo County and then city of
Yeah,
Palo
that-
Alto?
yeah.
That was my understanding, it was a lot
Yeah,
of the San
a whole bunch
Mateo
of-
folks.
So anyway, so that group met just yesterday, so I have their
Okay.
update, and I'd like to, you know.
Yeah,
share-
absolutely.
Great.
So, not in any particular order. First of all, I got a call from, the guy who's the lead for the Sausalito Climate Commission. And he asked, they're running into the cost effectiveness study problem. And I said, have your climate coordinator call Shannon. So I'm just saying, but that wasn't the South Bay guys. The South Bay guys were asking me yesterday, what's Larkspur doing about cost effectiveness study, because they're bumping into the same thing. And I said, I didn't really know what the current status was, and I would find out to the next meeting and report back to them. But the other thing that I want to kind of revisit a little bit here is when the reach codes first came up, a few years ago, pre the Berkeley decision, there were three subjects. There was all electric for new construction. There was the flex path for existing buildings that were proposing major remodels. And there was enhanced EV charging requirements. So those were the three areas. Then the Berkeley decision came in, knocked out the prospect for all electric for new construction, but there was still the possibility of those other two. And those jurisdictions that had adopted all electric for new construction either stopped enforcing it, or many jurisdictions actually repealed their ordinances. Okay, so here we are now. And what's going on in the South Bay is what jurisdictions are adopting is FlexPath. Instead of for major remodels, and also for major remodels, a requirement about electric readiness. So if a trigger is hit, like whatever the square footage is, 500, 700, whatever they use, that they have to meet a FlexPath score, and FlexPath is still allowed in California. And they also have to, if they hit that trigger, they also have to be electric ready. So meaning that they could become all electric, they're not required to become all electric, but they'd have to be wired for all electric. And then the third thing jurisdictions down there are working on, and some are adopting, is air conditioning to heat pump. So if your air conditioner burns out, you need to replace it with a heat pump. And the beauty of that is not only the heat pump cheaper for air conditioning, but when your gas furnace goes out, you've already got a heat pump installed that can provide the heat, so you get 2 for 1, right? So those are the three areas they're working on down there. And my understanding, Shannon, was the reason you were thinking to go with CALGreen Tier 1 is because it picked up the enhanced EV charging and a bunch of other stuff. So I just want to throw out here an idea. Is that I don't hear much about the South Bay jurisdictions necessarily trying to adopt CALGreen Tier 1. So another path that Larkspur might take that might be able to sidestep the cost effectiveness study, if that ends up being a problem, is to go down those other three paths: FlexPath, enhanced EV charging, and air conditioning to heat pump, just as an alternative.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are concluding if you get those three in place, and then you have the zero NOx regs, coming in at some point, that's a pretty good package. And on the flex path, just as a reminder of what that is, that says if your remodel is big enough that it hits a trigger point, and most Marin jurisdictions are using 500 square feet.
Yeah.
Not all of them use that, but they're trying to align around 500, so it's the same jurisdiction to jurisdiction. The flex path says, homeowner, you can do anything you want, but you're going to get points for certain systems that you install. And you get more points for putting in electric stuff than gas stuff, is basically what it is. So it doesn't preclude putting in gas equipment, but it sort of incentivizes putting in electric equipment.
Points toward what? What do you
Pardon
mean?
me?
Points toward what?
A required goal.
Toward a score. So it's like, if you put in a gas furnace, you get 1 point, but if you put in a heat pump furnace, you get 8 points.
And you're trying.
And you're
for
trying to
this-
get a total of 15 points or something like that for your remodel.
Got it.
And you
And-
need to do that to get a remodel.
And to
Right.
get your permit.
So you need to clear a certain
Correct.
score
And
in
the
order to get it
jurisdiction,
permitted.
exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but you're trying to get a score.
Got it.
And the county of Marin and several jurisdictions already have flex path in
I
place.
see.
So I think about half the jurisdictions have that in
And
place.
part of why folks have a flex path is that this was done at this, my understanding is it was done at the state level. And there was a model flex path.
Exactly.
And so there were energy studies, there were cost effectiveness energy
It's-
studies that were done for this flex path.
So
Exactly.
that would be
Ah.
considered complete. So and so your idea, David, is like to avoid another study requirement.
Yeah, so in other words, if you go the flex path and you stay within the model flex. What shall I say, the flex code that the state prepared. It checks all the boxes already.
Got it.
So I think it's a much easier path to go down. And the whole point of that particular one and the electric ready is to try and start dealing with the existing building stock.
Mhm.
Whereas the state level stuff is really dealing with new buildings. I mean, new buildings, it's a done deal. I mean, the state code for new building, again, it has a flex path. But almost nobody would not go all electric because the other requirements are so hard that most people are gonna go all.
So one wouldn't use the flex path.
There were a couple of reasons why we didn't use the flex path. We didn't adopt it when when some other jurisdictions did, because we were in the process of insourcing our building department, which will have, I think, huge dividends in terms of what we're able to do for sustainability, how we do business at the counter, et cetera. So we were like on the precipice of insourcing a chief building official. And at that time, I was like, flex path, and there was a lot of investment. And again, it was a great investment, but as our neighbors were doing this, said, this was like an 8-month process for like our permit techs to make sure that we could, because you don't want to pass something and then not know how to aid
Yeah.
folks or not actually implement it, right? Like there's not, the paper laws on this like aren't helpful, right? It doesn't take GHG. They prevent it from putting it in our atmosphere, and it certainly doesn't suck it out. So that was one of the concerns. And then at the time, before there was this deadline, et cetera, one of the pieces of advice I got it was someone who was at the county at the time, said like the 2025 codes are going to be really hardcore. You're going to get a lot if you haven't done it already, just by adopting those codes, to where they didn't say don't do a
Yeah.
flex path, but you're going to get a lot of bang for your buck by just taking all of this. Why we didn't go the flex path route when we were under the time constraints for the October 1 is that tier 1's really hardcore, and like we're gonna go for it, so we could, if we were able to dial things back, that we just had more options. And again, I'm not disparaging
Yeah,
flex
no,
path,
I'm
et
just- I'm just
cetera.
bringing it
No,
up
it's
because
good.
that's what a bunch of jurisdictions in the South Bay are presently doing.
And another thing that was brought to my attention by current county staff, to your point about EVs, is Larkspur's done this in the past too, where we've adopted tier 1, but there's exception of energy, right? So there's energy exclusions. And again, you look through that, but it's not totally intuitive, or at least not intuitive to me as a non-building official, building expert. Almost all of the EV stuff is not in the energy requirements. It lives elsewhere in tier 1.
Right.
And you can get a lot of these goals for very, very, ambitious, EV ready, EV compliant, et cetera,
Yeah.
standards in tier 1,
Yeah.
and it doesn't live in energy, which again, if you hear energy, I'm like, isn't EVs energy, guys? But that's not.
Yeah, so,
It
I'm
is.
just bringing it out as
Yep.
this kind of rolls through, that's a possible route to go. And one of the ideas of the whole reach codes, the model reach codes that the county led development of, was to have similar codes from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, so builders didn't have to read a whole nother set of stuff as they moved.
Yeah.
around. So it's just a thought as this moves. The last thing I wanted to report on about the South Bay folks, they were asking not only about cost effectiveness, but they were also very interested in what people up here were thinking about the prospects to adopt reach codes after October 1st. And so I reached out to Mark Chabria, the county.
Yep.
And you already mentioned that Larkspur's working with the county, I suppose.
It's Mark.
Yeah.
What
And
a
asked
comedy.
him to write a short summary of what the county is relying on, because they also are enacting a new reach code after October 1. I forget what meeting it is, but right around now, it's October or November, and it's real close in.
I believe the target might be November.
November?
Yeah.
And so I put the people, I asked him to write up a summary, he did, had a bunch of reference, and I sent that to the South Bay folks, so
Yeah.
I'm just saying there's some good communication going on back and forth here. You mentioned about collaborating with other
Yeah.
jurisdictions, we're trying to do that at the community activist level as well as at city.
Yeah, one of the things Councilmember Margulies, through her research said, September 30th, City and County of San Francisco adopted some really ambitious measures. Is there anybody we can contact there?
That's pretty close to October 1, isn't it?
Yeah. Mark's predecessor, who held his position,
Oh,
is
yeah.
now fancy at City and County of San Francisco, so I'll be in touch with him to where he'll be able to let me
Right.
know what their process
Okay.
was and what they're
Good.
using, so.
Perfect.
So working on it, okay. And then, move along to, again, if there's anyone who has any, comment just on the minutes, these aren't like city council minutes where they have to go in our record to be signed by the clerk, but we do want to make sure that we memorialize our meetings.
I just have one comment. Tom
Yeah.
Flynn was an attendee and he isn't listening. He came in.
Oh.
As he did tonight. I think he has a conflict on this particular. night.
I do. I have another meeting.
I just want
Saying
to
that.
add him into that.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that, Tom. But thank you for showing up.
Thank you.
Okay, and then,
I have one other thing I'd just like to bring up.
Yep.
I have one other subject that I'd like to touch bases on tonight. It won't be long, and it has to do with zero NOx. So I'd like to see if we can possibly preserve enough time, 5 or 7 minutes.
at the end for items not on the agenda,
It's
Yeah,
Does
let's try to do that. Yeah, we can try to do that as a community presentation and discussion,
right
time permitting. Yep,
to be short.
item 5. Okay,
okay, so we'll just move on to electrification of fleets and landscaping equipment. We can discuss, at a couple of meetings ago, we had a community request to discuss our landscaping equipment and what we're doing, and then, Vice Mayor Andre was actually in attendance and said, he also just give us an update about electrification of fleets, because it's not the same thing, but it's city-owned assets, and it's one of the things we are in control of, unlike so many GHGs that are emitted in our community. So I'm happy to take either part first. Do people want to hear about our fleet, like our vehicle fleet first, or do we want to talk about landscaping equipment? First, the fleet is pretty much an informational item. There's not going to be any action tonight, aside from if folks have other ideas around it. You want to hear about fleets?
Sure, yeah.
Let me pull this up.
Can't wait.
So the city of Larkspur has a very modest fleet, and we don't have a lot of heavy duty equipment.
are you gonna share?
I will share in a second.
Okay.
Let me, I just wanted to provide some background. Let me sorry, I was taking notes to make sure Tom Flynn's in the notes. We don't need that up on the screen, so. Give me 1
I
second.
like hearing about Larkspur not having much heavy duty equipment. Some other jurisdictions have recently had to buy new or proposed to buy new heavy duty equipment, like a new heavy duty haul truck and stuff like that, like $450,000. And there's been this debate, do you buy a fossil fuel vehicle or not? Like, you can't right now meet their needs with an electric vehicle
Yeah.
available.
Yeah,
And so then what do you do?
Yeah.
And so a lot of people have been saying, just lease one or rent
Yes,
one for the
right.
interim. Now
Right.
give yourself the 2 years, 3 years, 5
for the
years. whatever it
technology
is.
to catch up.
Don't tie up $500,000 on something that is gonna be obsolete in a few years and you're really not gonna have it.
I don't
And
want to,
then you'll sell it and
Mhm.
it'll be operating somewhere else. I mean, it's still, you have like supported the creation of that piece of equipment.
I don't want to let us off the hook too much, and I do just want to say for anyone who might be listening in, etc. We also don't provide the same services some other cities do. It's not super common around here, but some cities provide their own solid waste and trash service, right? That requires big trucks that have a whole different set of concerns, especially if you ever talk to the folks at Marin Sanitary, who provides provides garbage and recycling service for Larkspur. We're a very hilly community. And so some of the technology, it's literally a heavier lift. We also don't do water or sewer here, which can require different kinds of vehicles. We also are a pretty compact community, so we don't have to drive very far. There are some, incorporated or unincorporated, some counties that are just huge. And so if you're a sheriff, you may be traveling miles and miles and miles at a time. So they do have different concerns. I just want to acknowledge that. But yes, also we don't like to buy toys we don't need to. So I will give us credit for that. It's both fiscally and climate conscious. So let me go ahead and share this. So I'll actually start with, let's see. Let me go around here. Let me give myself presentation permission. Move myself over. All right, I'm not promoted to a panelist. I'll share what Central Marin Fire and the Central Marin Police Authority are doing to electrify their fleet, because they do have. Okay. Sharing my screen. And this is carried over. If you see that, it's our old meeting. It was agendized for that. So Central Marin Fire is monitoring advances in electric fleet options for fire services and opportunities. Due to the long distances fire safety vehicles travel and need to operate during uncertain conditions, including power outages, reliability is prioritized right now. I just said how small our community was, but we do a lot of mutual aid all throughout the state, all throughout the region. So those vehicles need to be ready to go the distance. But staff and the profession is looking at it really closely and hoping that there'll be advancements in the near
Just
future.
also, it was my understanding that we order those vehicles like 10 years in advance.
Yeah, so that's the other thing
To
is,
put on them is a very,
Wow.
yeah. So, we have probably something on order
Wow.
that's just the technology's not there and they can't keep up with the distances. So, yeah, there is a long runway for
Yeah.
procuring a fire vehicle.
yeah.
Thank you.
The other thing to keep in mind is the heavy vehicles always look like they would be big polluters. But the fact is, passenger vehicles produce way more
Mhm.
greenhouse gases than all heavy vehicles combined, way more. I mean, I don't know what the percentages are, but it's passenger vehicles are the big hitters.
Good point.
Well, also, I try to bring this up too, for especially fire things.
Yeah.
Their mission is to get carbon to not be in the atmosphere, right? Like this is an emergency vehicle situation. And we do not have a lot of company cars that are not non-emergency vehicles in our particular department. So there's not a lot of staff cars where we don't have a lot of cars in Larkspur, but we do have a couple of e-golfs, to where a public works inspector takes it off and takes a company car, et cetera. There are larger fire protection districts and fire departments that might have, non-safety vehicles that would be really good candidates for electrification, and we're just very small. On the Central Marin Police Authority fleet, the CMPA attempts to maintain a fleet of 13 marked police vehicles. And they're exclusively used by uniformed folks to conduct patrol duties 24 hours a day, 365 days per year. So these vehicles get used a lot. Which when I get into our fleet, some of our vehicles and some of our fleet is not used very often. It's specialized equipment. These are workhorses. Additionally, CMPA attempts to maintain a fleet of 8 unmarked police vehicles, and those are used by detectives and command staff as agency cars. And so to date, CMPA has purchased 3 marked electric Chevrolet Blazer police vehicles. That was authorized in May, and they're out and in use. 2 marked electric Ford F-150s for Watch Commander police vehicles. That was a little bit earlier in 2025 that was authorized. 2 marked all-electric Blazer police vehicles that was authorized in 2024, and then 2 Chevy Bolts. Those are EVs for our community services officers, so those do parking tickets, other kinds of code enforcement, not non-emergency, and 2 Tesla Model 3s for administrators. And currently CMPA has 8 charging stations for the Bolts, Teslas, and for potential growth. That was all done before 2024. CMPA is currently in process. The work is being done and they're working with PG&E right now on a project to completely upgrade their electrical and install electric chargers to accommodate a future all-electric fleet, so that they will be EV ready again through replacement and through attrition as the fleet becomes more and more electrified and the vehicles are authorized, that we have enough power there, that we have all the infrastructure we need, et cetera. So that's yeah.
How many charging stations did you say?
Currently 8. But that will, I don't know exactly when it's done because they were in the process with PG&E, but their whole kind of, is it exactly a courtyard or is it just where they keep things? That is all in process of being upgraded to be ready for the whole fleet.
Yeah, and Shannon, can we assume from this list that like, this is a complete list of all of the vehicles purchased, or is this just the electric vehicles that were purchased, and there's another list somewhere of the non-electric vehicles purchased?
Oh, I can get a list of the non-electric vehicles purchased
Just to
because there might be.
understand the percentage, just
Yeah,
as
to
if-
get the percentage, yeah, I'm happy to provide that. No, this only reflects the electric vehicles purchased, and there have been, I will double check, but I believe there have been some, ICE vehicles purchased.
Right, just to know like
Since then.
what the trend line looks like, if over
Yeah.
time, we're just more and more of that percentage is electric.
Yeah.
It's impressive though. Those are impressive numbers. We're
Yeah,
at
so
13.
I mean, I assume
13.
unless there's a list.
Internal
of portions
combustion
that line
engine.
of all
Sorry.
the-
Oh, I don't mean that ICE. I'm sorry. I shouldn't talk about, for anyone listening, when I say ICE, I mean internal combustion engine. Sorry, I'm in vehicle land. I'm not talking about the law enforcement agencies.
Let's say,
Um,
oh, I'm sorry, Robin. I was just gonna say, in the top bullet, it suggests that we maintain a fleet of 13 total. Are there,
Well, plus 8
13 marked.
Marked.
and
Oh,
plus
okay.
8 unmarked
okay, so
Unmarked.
21 total?
Yeah.
Okay.
of police vehicles. Where's the charging facility?
For the
One
police,
that is referred to, working on a project to install electric chargers.
yeah. So there's, when you, it's at the, it's in Piper, it's in the Piper Park location, and it's behind the gate. So it's where all the
Okay.
company vehicles are stored. So you wouldn't be seeing anything except for
So-
maybe a PG&E truck if you were a member of the public at this point for that project.
And if I can just say one thing as CAF members speaking to other CAF members, like, this is awesome, and I love seeing all the great progress from the city. I think your point, David, is well taken though, which is like, city does everything they can, because you guys respectfully are, more on the hook than your average Larkspur citizen, but I still feel that as a citizen representative of CAF, as we know from our prioritization list, the vast majority of the emissions is far from our residents. And so I would just say, well, this is great, and I wouldn't want to see it slow down. I try to always keep in the back of my mind, like, just the slice of the pie is so small.
It's really us.
It's really us,
Yeah.
and whatever we can do to just keep that in mind. The progress is amazing, but it's just, we gotta do more on the resident side.
A really cool thing, even though the city's slice of the pie is fairly small, it's like, it's demonstrating, it's like, nobody can drive down Doherty and not see all the solar collectors at Redwood High School.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
exactly.
and on Hall
It sets a
Middle
tone,
School.
it sets a tone.
You know, and if you see, especially if the police vehicles start having some sort of decal on them that says electric vehicles. I mean, if you can't tell the Blazer, the ICE Blazer from the EV Blazer,
Right, yeah, how
then
do
you
people know?
lose that. So
Mhm.
that might be some feedback, I would say, is to,
Play it up.
make sure that.
Play it up.
play
It
up,
says
play it up.
electric
That's
vehicle.
right.
Because that's use the wins here to like advertise it to residents who will see those vehicles driving around
Because
everywhere.
how
That's
cool is
nice.
that? The police.
Yeah.
using
That's
EVs,
cool.
right?
And
That-
there's also, again, I'm speaking very general, so if you talk to a police officer, they'll say she doesn't exactly know what she's talking about, but there's also best practices and requirement for law enforcement where essentially, if it's an internal combustion engine, you should be idling for safety purposes, right? Like if so you can be ready to respond to a call, or if you're outside of a situation where there are safety concerns. So again, I agree, like when you look at the whole community versus the GHG emissions from a single, police car, or police vehicle, it's relatively small, but those cars are used often, and there are some things that are very counterintuitive where you tell people if you have a, if you have a gas car, turn it off, do not idle, do not
Right.
sit
Not
everywhere,
if you're
et cetera, right?
Right.
So
Right.
there's some,
That's
Yeah,
fair.
yeah, so there are some real gains
And
there.
with the police CVs, they can sit there with it ready to go. all
Totally
the
quiet.
time and not totally quiet.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that,
Stealth
you know,
mode.
I don't know who's our council member is on Central Maine Police board, but I mean, it's an impressive number of vehicles, and to somehow advertise that.
I mean,
Because-
even when I see the advertising on the decals on the electric buses, that's a huge advertisement for electric vehicles, and I think police could do the same, given all the
Mhm.
progress. But yeah, sorry to interrupt, you were saying that if we can have a representative at CMA.
Well, I'm just saying, you know.
All of these decisions are made at the police council,
Yeah.
at the police council
Yeah.
meetings and are authorized by that. So it's representatives from Larkspur, San Anselmo, and
Right.
Corte Madera. So also kudos to our neighboring
Yeah.
jurisdictions
It's impressive.
as
Well,
well.
I think all those jurisdictions would favor having more EV advertising on those vehicles, so it ought to be a doable thing. Yeah, I mean, if they're getting them, let's advertise.
Maybe not so much on the unmarked. I don't know. I'll have
Okay.
to.
Just the marked ones, just the
And the
marked
one-
ones. Yeah.
Unmarked.
Well, no, yeah.
And then I will actually pull up a spreadsheet so we can look at it together. But so the city has a pretty modest fleet consisting of 20 active vehicles. They're nearly all of them are in our public works department. And again, unlike some agencies and organizations, Larkspur's fleet largely consists of light duty vehicles. And I will say it's still work, but it makes electrification efforts less challenging. So again, if you're looking at data from other cities and maybe if they seem like they're behind us, et cetera, they may have a very different mission and set of services that they're delivering to their community. And also there are different budgetary concerns depending on the budget picture of a city and just how long it can take to turn over a fleet with the lifetime of a vehicle. So the considerations and challenges we do have though, lawnmowers are one of our challenges that it's getting better and better. But when we're talking about lawnmowers, we're talking about the big electric lawnmowers to do Piper Park, big fields, etc. That's something where both staff is always looking to evaluate it, but both at the price point and at the usability right now, it's a heavy lift. And then also in terms of the mix of our fleet, just reliability during storm events and other natural disasters or emergency situations. That doesn't mean that new vehicles wouldn't be electric, but there is talk with our public works staff of if there's a perfectly good pickup truck that's an internal combustion engine, we don't use it as much, but we might keep it on our rolls. So if there's a power outage or something and it's a heavy storm, we would have an option, a gas option to get somewhere in the community that may be difficult, rather than auction the vehicle or decommission
I
it.
was gonna ask, so sorry, if there is a major power outage, what do we do if all our vehicles are electric?
Right.
So the companion question is, does the city of Larkspur has its own fuel storage?
We don't.
Because if the electricity out, nobody's pumping gas anyway. So there's almost no difference. You have one tank of.
Yeah,
Well-
you can store gas and fuel for it. And people
That's
do
why I
that.
asked the question. Does
So-
the city
Yeah.
have any fuel storage? The answer is no.
But
People have lots of batteries.
it's a little bit more nuanced than that, but
Yeah.
we can take questions first and then I can answer
just-
this. Again, very generally, I'm not our public works superintendent, but I
And this
do
is
know
like
her.
really far out, and I'm looking at our little 2x2 here, but like in the top corner of high impact and high effort is. An attempt to invest in things like battery storage and microgrids, which long term, high effort. Is I think the future of how to solve for power outage events, right? If we all know that we need to go all electric, we certainly wouldn't be the first jurisdiction to figure out what happens when the power goes
Yeah.
out. The clean solution, of course, is some version of microgrids and battery storage, massive investment. A very long time scale, but it's an area I'm personally extremely interested in, at least figuring out. How to even plan for a more complete, clean storage solution.
Yeah, I agree completely, and actually, it isn't so far off. I mean, we've got grants so far for Dillon Beach and the town of Tamales for microgrids. We're working on additional proposals for additional West Marin cities and communities, and
Much worried about that.
the organization that we're working with on this, Clean Coalition, which is a nonprofit, which has great technical capabilities, gave us advice on getting you know, the solar and potentially batteries for the library. And, you know, we've got the school, we've got the library, we've got the police station, we've got great potential from our storage here.
Mhm, mhm. Super cool technology on this front. That's
Yeah.
definitely worth keeping in our radar. And you're right that it isn't as far out as I made it sound. I think one, we're gonna be facing a lot more extreme weather events, which we all know, and we don't want to abandon our goals.
Right, and the other thing is that, you know, in terms of fire safety, I mean, being able to shut down power if there's any potential risk of fire and rely on local clean power that you have stored. I mean, these microgrids in West Marin, we got funding through PUC, basically. And it, you know, this program is for more remote areas at this point.
Right.
But it's the first phase of the microgrid incentive program, which is being rolled out through PG&E, Southern California Gas, Electric, and San Diego Gas and Electric, and Southern California Edison.
And we talk about fire lots. The city manager brings us up about folks who work in emergency management. We're also in earthquake country. I get why
Right.
fire is top of mind, but one
Yeah.
of the big contingency plans, and again, I don't want to diminish a major fire event. I live in Sonoma. I've been through it, but if there's a really big earthquake and there's a bridge down or there's long-term power outages,
Yeah.
et cetera, that's as much of a use case for our community, and you know, really it could be anywhere in California. And then not to get too pessimistic, but there's also unnatural disasters if you had some kind of cyber attack on a grid, et cetera, where there's again all these reasons to be prepared for emergency situations.
Yeah.
But to your immediate question about we do not, again, we're not a large agency. Some large agencies will like basically have their own gas station, for lack of a better term. We don't have that. We do have agreements with certain gas stations, et cetera, to where there are reserves of fuel that you don't have to go to the pump, and first responders, emergency stuff are prioritized. Again, if we're on our own and on an island for 2 weeks because everything's down, like all bets are off. So the point's well taken. And again, there's so much discouraging news on the climate front, but in terms of where battery storage is and where it's headed and the timelines people thought there'd be and where we're at, it's pretty promising how.
Yeah.
If you go back to like 95 and they have what they thought battery storage would be at this point in time, it's like one of the only metrics we're ahead of the game.
Totally. And I know there's a lot to say on this point, so I'll keep it brief, but I think this is the microgrid sort of battery storage. Sort of at the larger infrastructure project led by the city is another example of setting the tone where residents can also follow suit, because obviously everyone can, for those who are interested and can afford it, might be interested in doing their own solar and storage combination. I know that because I'm installing mine later this year. And so I do think it's yet another opportunity where the city sets the tone and talks about its importance and has an, you know, an example with a library or something. Where it can store its own power and then people feel incentivized to do their
Well,
own.
it's a
Yeah.
very small example and it wasn't power storage, but when we had the couple years we had a number of PSPS events, right?
Right.
The Central Marin Police Authority community room, people were charging their phones, charging medical devices coming in. So again, that wasn't a battery situation. They just had the capability, but the communities already look to capabilities for agencies and cities to be able to provide power in emergency situations. So the
Right.
more you have, or
And
the
solar
ability you have,
pesos,
the
they
better.
open with a giant gasoline generator parked out on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's lots of ways to slice it.
Yeah.
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 Before I get into what exactly the fleet looks like, this is our newest all electric
But can I
edition.
just- can I
Yep,
just make one
absolutely.
point, and that is bi-directional charging with vehicles.
Sure.
is coming.
Also huge, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so we definitely want to plan for that eventuality.
And, you know, I think the bottom line on that whole thing is the answer, and you brought this up, it's a really good one. I used to get that question. In fact, that is the first question people that don't know anything about the subject ask when you talk about building electrification. What about when the power is out? That is the first question that you always get asked, and the answer is getting better and better all the time, I think is, you know, the answer really. So.
So this is our newest edition. It's ordered. It's not here yet, but it's for our recreation department. And so it's an all electric
Wow.
John Deere.
It's great.
It's not tractor light, but it's, I mean, it's really to be kind of used for anything, partially for our events, et cetera, so that staff was using their own vehicles for it. And then also, opportunities for public works to use it as an electric vehicle. If you're, I don't want to say just doing work in the park, but if it's localized to the park, that we don't have to bring out one of our trucks, et cetera, and we can do some.
Should be in the parade.
That's what I.
Oh.
Yeah.
I need to see if maybe like Larky, our library mascot would fit in
Yeah.
there, because it's actually kind of Larky colors, the John Deere color, so there's some good synergy there.
Do you know?
I can get you that answer when I'm not on screen, because I can pull it up. It was around, I believe, I don't know what the final quote was, and then there were like add-ons, we were doing the add-ons, but I think it was around 20 grand, 25 grand.
So not even hugely expensive.
Yeah, and you can get really nice versions of this. John Deere, they're a very savvy company. You can get as tricked out as you want, and you can go up to but let me double check that that's actually where we landed,
Okay,
because we might have done some upgrades and investments to where it ended up being a little.
This is like a perfect subject for an article in the Climate Corner.
Yeah, once it gets out there, we were hoping which I hope it's because so many people want them and not because they're not making very many of them, but we were hoping we have, for anybody who's interested, this Saturday's our pumpkin patch at Piper Park. We were hoping that we would be able to haul pumpkins in them and have pictures on like be able to do on the tractor,
Right.
but instead we have wheelbarrows. We have like some wheelbarrows that we'll be hauling pumpkins, so also low carbon.
we don't have any horse rides or?
No pony rides, maybe next time. This year for a sneak peek. I'm now getting tangentially related to climate, but I also work with rec. It's one of my areas. We do the night lights every year. And so this year we're going to do a choo-choo train for toddlers.
Right.
And so we were looking at vendors. And so we're reviewing the vendors, et cetera. And one of them had like a diesel choo-choo train. I'm like, you can't do that. I will be fired if the diesel choo-choo train comes out. So
He's towed some.
it'll be electric. It'll be electric choo-choo train. The toddlers. But- Okay, let me stop the share and then I'll reshare in a second as I go through. And then this is just an old timey spreadsheet to show you, if folks are interested, what our fleet actually, our makeup actually looks like. And what we use them for. And if it's active, these are all active, or if they're leased. We do not have a lot of vehicles. So we have a couple of electric Golfs that are either flex for staff who needs it, or used by our public works inspector. When he's going through town, there's, and then, sorry, the key here is the green is electric. So the green is actually green. The blue, these are still considered part of our fleets, but there's no motor. And then the white is just a conventional internal combustion engine. And then the kind of tan is infrequent or specialty use. And those are also internal combustion engines or gas powered.
Really just the white ones are the ones that are.
We do not have a lot of regularly used conventional internal combustion vehicles. Again, we don't have a lot of vehicles, but that's also part of why you can also see how old some of these vehicles are. So
The old,
they're not necessarily, I think that 91 Ford might win.
I thought we just bought an F-150 Lightning.
Is the Lightning not on
I
here?
don't see it. Oh, you did?
2 of those.
Yeah,
No,
hang on a second.
Yeah.
But you said they like-
If it didn't show up, these are in use, it may be ordered and hasn't arrived.
Okay,
So this is the most recent spreadsheet of like what our fleet looks like today. Because also we pulled a couple out because I had, as of like a couple weeks ago, some decommissioned vehicles, but they've sold at auction. So they're now off the books.
For kids.
So yeah, so cars for whoever wants it by the public bidding process that we are required to do. we actually got more money for the vehicle than we thought because people want small utility trucks, where now to buy a truck, it's expensive and big and large. There
Yeah.
were people who were interested. Um,
Hmm.
but again, an area that staff is monitoring. And again, we haven't bought new ones in a while, but really the diesel mowers are the ones that are used often and not green. So, I'll stop sharing, and that is that concludes just the portion of kind of what our fleet looks like, et cetera. And we can move on to the other discussion, which is just our electric kind of light duty equipment or anything the city uses. So for folks who weren't with us around 2017, the city amended its regulations and municipal code around leaf blowers, hedge trimmers. And it was a very robust discussion at that time. And where Larkspur landed is that for residential electric leaf blowers, hedge trimmers, and exempted was multifamily dwellings, which is a term in our municipal code. If you're wondering why I'm saying multifamily dwellings, that's actually the language in our code. Apartment buildings, and then commercial was excluded at that time.
And municipal park areas.
Municipal park areas we excluded, and part of the reason for that was, again, for storm events, if we needed to have them, and then there, our leaf blowers get a lot of heavy use, our hedge trimmers get a lot of heavy use. At that time, staff wanted to have some time to both try out on a trial basis as well as research what we could use and if it would work for us. Since then, we have, again, some gas leaf blowers in case of storm events or in case we feel like we need them. We didn't just throw them in the trash, but we use electric leaf blowers and hedge trimmers now. So the technology's gotten a lot better in 10 years.
Yeah.
Although we replaced it a while ago, and then also we just invested in, you do have to swap them out and recharge them, etc. But for folks who may not know, our Public Works Courtyard is across the street from Piper Park. It's not far, so that's what staff has done. And then we had members of the CAF who were interested in potentially revisiting this item. It's in our climate action plan as something to consider. A number of our neighbors went for more ambitious regulations around that, and you'll see a number of our neighbors, no one's exempt, everyone has to be electric. You'll see that schools aren't, and that's because schools are regulated by the ed code. So there's a number of things where actually cities, counties, etc., do not regulate schools, the ed code does.
Question on the residential, like electric equipment,
Yep.
we're not enforcing that.
It's not that we're not enforcing it, but to your point about that, it's complaint based at this time.
Got it.
And it's complaint based for, the complaint goes to the Central Marin Police Authority. Which again, they prioritize in order of importance. So the CSOs, that's one of the things that, again, I don't run CMPA, but it would likely be a CSO call. And then it's also when you can get to it. So if a CSO is responding to another call, one of the challenges we've had is that by the time you get somewhere, the person's gone, right?
Yeah.
Like even if it's not that long.
Right. That makes sense.
But there are some other cities and stuff who have code enforcement where it's out of planning or it's out of admin, et cetera, where there's all kinds of proactive code enforcement that isn't done through law enforcement, but that's not the case here.
Yeah.
So when people say my neighbor, is all the time I'm hearing this gas powered leaf blower, et cetera, that is happening.
Yeah.
Got
it. Those responses are.
So I should have brought it to share it, but so whenever there's a call that goes out, even if we don't see someone, et cetera, San Anselmo has their version, Corte Madera has their version, Larkspur has their version, there's an educational pamphlet. So we could, like within our code, it could be an infraction, et cetera, but usually it's just letting somebody know.
Yeah.
Do you even know about this regulation? And then also, one of the concerns, although the way the code is written, it's on the property owner, is, these landscapers might not know, like these landscapers might not operate out of Larkspur, so they just have their equipment and they're, all over, and working all over the Bay Area, or working all over the North Bay, so, they bring the tools they have. So the idea was
enforcement is on the property owner.
Yeah,
I think, a few years ago, Fairfax and San Anselmo had, rebates for
They did.
landscapers. Does Larkspur do anything like that?
We did not do
Does
that.
anybody do it anymore?
I would have to double check. My understanding that was super, super popular. So there was a set amount of money set aside from that, and I suspect part of why San Anselmo and Fairfax had that program is they share a sustainability analyst, a sustainability coordinator. So if it makes sense, often things will mirror each other because it's the same staff person working on it. So they were able to partner with like a couple of hardware stores to like actually turn your stuff in, because that was another concern, right? It's like, don't just have someone to get a new one, right? But actually turn in your gas powered, your gas powered machine to show that you're swapping it out. And the program went well, like in terms of administration, et cetera. It was all pretty smooth. What's
Yeah,
happening?
oh, we have Jody here too.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jody, are you raising your hand?
No, but I'm just saying she certainly. could-
Oh, yeah, Jody, you should talk. I should stop talking. You probably know more than me.
And I feel badly because she did provide me with some information about Fairfax's rebate program and the trade-in program that they implemented during the time where they were trying to get their folks to move from gas powered to electric. And I forgot to bring it with me, so I can bring it the next meeting, but I don't know, Jody, if you have anything to say about that program or have any comments to share with us, the success of it?
I don't have a recent update exactly on where things are at, but Shannon, you had it down. We worked with Fairfax Lumber, and they could turn in their old and then buy a new. I'm not exactly sure how San Anselmo did it because they don't have a store. I don't believe a hardware store. Anyway,
They
yeah,
might have
no,
had a
you
site
covered it.
that they partnered with.
Yeah. Yeah, but you basically have it. And the latest, I'm not up to date on exactly where we're at with, do we still have any funds? How many, rebates, et cetera. I think we still have funds in it, but I haven't heard differently.
I have a couple of comments on this subject. One is, I would say people are not aware that enforcement is against the homeowner. And if that was more widely known, that could really change compliance, I think, because I'd say there are few homeowners that aren't aware of it, but there probably are a lot of the gardeners who aren't aware of it. And if the homeowner know that enforcement would be against them as opposed to the gardener, I think that could really change the dynamic around this. So I'm just throwing that out there. A couple other thoughts. One is that the reason this is a big deal for most neighbors is the noise. But the reality is these small gas powered tools are incredibly polluting. They don't, for example, your car has like a catalytic converter on it if you have a gasoline fueled car. The tools do not. And they are hugely more polluting for the amount of runtime, even compared to a full-size vehicle. I mean, it's kind of weird. They're this tiny little engine,
That's really interesting.
but
And big health issues.
yeah, and then of course for the operator, they're right there breathing that the whole
Right,
time,
right.
plus the
The
stuff
noise.
there. But coincidentally, this topic came up just yesterday at this fossil free building Silicon Valley meeting. And the many jurisdictions down there have ordinances around small gasoline engines. And what they said to a person was incentives work way better than penalties. And so there was some discussion about the range of incentives. And the range was $50 to $250 for homeowners and $500 to $1,000 for professional gardeners. So it's just something to think about. I know there's been a state program that's been active a couple of times. And in fact, it was active fairly recently. They had, some certain amount of funding and people could apply.
It
But I
crashed
think-
the website
I
because we
think-
shared it in, I don't know if it was the Climate Corner then, or if it was just regular
That's what I
analog
thought.
newsletter,
But
electric
I think
newsletter.
there's a disconnect that between the guys using it, the homeowner says, well, I'm not gonna tell my gardener who to use. Not realizing that it's the homeowner that potentially would be, have a fine or something like that around it. So I wonder if there's something better we could do around that, to help it, because, yeah. We went around and told our neighbors gardeners about this state program. But, you know, were they very incented to do anything? I don't know. I don't think they did.
And when we had the discussion, you know, for context, et cetera, around leaf blowers, people cared as much about the noise as they did about the
Sure.
climate. It was not a climate focused conversation
Right.
necessarily.
But most
It was
people
more-
don't know how polluting they are.
No, it's true. But
I
I
think it's
just,
just a little.
So the suggestion from the Climate Action Forum was, does it make sense, and do we want to ask council to consider revising the code to eliminate the exemptions, which would bring us into alignment with Corte Madera, Fairfax? What I'm hearing here is that maybe a better focus for council would be to, talk about creating some rebate programs, and around those rebate programs,
Exchange.
do some, exchange programs, do some education about enforcement of this to homeowners, letting them know that
They're responsible.
they're on the hook,
Yeah.
right? That maybe that's a first step. But I know that Andy, who unfortunately can't be with us, has now brought this up on multiple occasions, that he would like to see us tighten up our restrictions.
Who is it?
Andy Blauvelt.
Oh, yeah.
He originally brought this to Kath at our first meeting, and then we put it onto the second agenda, and we didn't have time to get to it, and then the last agenda got consumed with the tier 1 CALGreen code, so we want to make sure we discuss it here, and whether or not, from our discussion here, a recommendation gets taken to council about tightening up the ordinance, or maybe doing something in the interim. And, you know, does anybody have any strong opinions?
Yeah.
I like David's idea of rebates and education for the residential. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think, you know, you were talking about educating people earlier, start them when they're young. And it goes a long way. You get 40 years of positive behavior. I think that's a great message. I think from the commercial property manager perspective, I have a really hard time going electric blowers. It does not cover the area that we need, unfortunately, at this time. We use it in limited capacities in the center, but we couldn't do the hill by a long shot without, unfortunately, these devices. But that's why I support the education, rebates and incentives. And hopefully we'll have better batteries over the course of the next 5 years.
So is the problem power or battery?
Both.
Like, it's not feasible to switch out the batteries for a space that size, or.
Yeah, for the number of batteries that you need for the time that we have to run these things, so we can be courteous to our residents. We wouldn't be able to do that, and additionally, they don't have the power to push what we're pushing. I mean, we're rolling into the fall here. It gets really nasty for a long time. And unfortunately, that's what we have to deal with. It.
Yeah,
Or
that's a good
brooms and rakes.
reason to keep being patient and don't buy more of those big powerful ones.
Yeah.
It's pretty.
Well, as soon as we got
Yeah.
batteries that'll actually work and
Yeah,
push.
yeah.
100% on board.
Yeah,
We're looking
great.
at solar for multifamily, EV charging, things like that as well to help offset, which I think will be great.
And just to build on that too, if I can briefly,
Yeah,
I
please.
did say my opinion is, of course, I would be supportive of the, like, rebates and education. I think it's that great. My thought though for the CAF is, you know, as with all things, we've made there are a lot of items that we could throw our weight against and ask to be prioritized. And it sounds like, I don't know Andy personally, but it sounds like Andy has a really strong opinion on this particular issue. I'm a broken record, but I'm always like, what's the highest impact? And depending on if it's like a health lens, maybe there's an argument to be made there, but before we understand, like, if there are any financial implications on the city, like if we want to do this rebate program, or if there's any kind of spending that would be associated with this, the question I would ask is, would those dollars be better spent on a higher impact effort? And maybe reviewing our top 10 lists. I keep staring at the sheet here.
Yeah.
And just to make sure before we, you know, decide to spend any of I know there's that kind of discretionary fund for CAF.
yeah.
Before we start to put anything against it, I would just want to make sure that we're not taking anything away from.
Well, I think what we could do, so We have an analyst in the city manager's office. It would be, I'm guessing, I'm estimating, but I've done this work in a previous life. To do like a census of like what incentive programs there are, if we wanted to do like in the Bay Area. That's 15, 20 hours of work. So it's an investment, but it's not something that we're gonna commission a consultant for $500 an hour to look for us. We're not committing anything. So I'm just putting this out there. If it's of interest to, I think the place to start would be the CAF, right? To say, staff looked into this. This is what exists elsewhere. Is this of interest to us? Should we share it, etc.? And that might be a place to start so we know what other folks are doing. And then if there's interest based on that, etc., or there's if there are big education campaigns, etc. Once we know that, again, I appreciate my colleagues all over the region because we can give them a call and say like, hey, how much money was your marketing budget?
Right.
Right? Like, did, was this a modest effort or how,
Yeah.
or if they're, again, like, I know that a lot of people, we all love data, if they're willing to share data, if they have more code enforcement or more education, how many people they got to, how many times they've gone and educated folks and did they change or, were there follow-up calls, etc. That is something where, again, time is money, but it's very modest and it's not committing
If you
anything.
say so, that makes me feel better.
And would be a good learning process.
Right.
If we wanted to do that, but I think it would be for that exercise, bring it back to the CAF as an information item or something rather than agendize it to council and have this big
Yeah.
discussion about like, do we want to do
I'd be
anything?
like,
Yeah,
Yeah, but also, there's like Bay Area wide programs like Bayren. Which,
Mhm.
I think a lot of people aren't aware, for lower income, they have incredible programs for weatherizing homes, making them more energy efficient, reducing draftiness, leaking,
Mhm.
heat from the buildings and so forth. And actually, in Marin, the level, I know people that have qualified for that program, they, are middle class people. And the county has programs, MCE has programs, MCE has a program specifically for landlords. I think in many respects, it's a matter of coordinating the programs that are already out there that they're, overreaching of, this county, this region. So
Are you talking specifically to lawn equipment though, or are you talking about solar?
I'm talking about all kinds of programs, all kinds of incentives. And I just think, while we're at it,
For from
Yeah.
an educational standpoint?
from an educational standpoint, but also from a coordination standpoint. Like, for example, if we could facilitate, a little more local coordination or word to landlords in this community about what MCE is doing and where they've actually been working with Marin Rental Property Owners Association,
Okay,
which, represents the interests of landlords. Those are the kind of things that I think are really just a matter of leveraging off of what's in place.
You had your hand up, but
I was actually gonna say, one, I love your idea, I think that's awesome, for 12,000 people, Larkspur, 9,000 voters, 5,000 households. And I think like half of those are multifamily buildings, so if you're able to like,
Yeah,
that's something else for us, we only have to educate 5 people.
Okay.
yeah,
To trickle down to all those buildings,
Right.
to come up with something more effective. But
Yeah.
David mentioned something too, sorry, earlier on cost analysis that I think was happening in Sunnyvale. Which I think that ties into what you were talking about, maybe.
Oh, well, they were just had some experience with the range of incentives that were provided. But yeah, here's an interesting thought about this. For homeowners themselves, I don't see very many homeowners themselves going up and firing up gas-fired leaf blowers. It's
about addressing the
mostly
landscape
they're
companies.
gardeners. that are-
Yeah.
And much like you were talking about the police cars, the gardeners are using that tool all day. So it seems to me, for some kind of action here, it's really about targeting. And I gotta respect what you said about, the larger commercial, but professional gardeners, that's really the target. Those are the guys that are running that tool all day long. And I would say, by my observation, half of them are using electric now. And they have the backpack batteries, really big
Mhm.
batteries, that's no bigger than the gas engine they used to carry on their back, right? So it's working for a bunch of them. And it's like, how do you get the rest of those? Because they're using it all like, you go into Home Depot now, you can't even buy a small gasoline powered tool. They don't sell them anymore. It's all electric.
Right.
So I don't know that it's so much residents in terms of the tools, but it's residents need to understand that they're accountable for the tool or gardeners
Sure.
using it.
I think that's right.
And,
Yeah.
and then maybe they talk to their gardener, hey, I could get fined because of you using that tool. I mean, if it's that dynamic.
Right,
That
and if I
doesn't
could
sound
build
like
on
friendly
that.
conversation.
Well,
Yeah,
no, they
it's not-
definitely have.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's a transactional relationship, but to build on that comment, I think to kind of wrap a few ideas together, I would say. I would like to see if we came back, if it's okay with you, Shannon, and the team, if it's a negligible amount of time. If there are programs like this that have sort of existed, it sounds like we're interested in understanding an educational campaign. That would go out to homeowners to help them understand what the ordinance is, their sort of liability, and how to talk to their gardeners specifically about what might be available to the gardener.
Right.
Right, I think that's a really important point, because it falls flat if that person's like, well, I don't have my mower, and so who cares? So I think if we could understand the scope of what it would take to stand up a educational program like that. And then what I'm gonna be listening for is that worth our time and effort and energy? And
Right.
hoping it will be, but if it feels like it's a lot to do, I might.
Well, I can't commit to how high touch or impactful it could be, but one of the most powerful communication tools we have is our rec brochure that we can add inserts to, etc. Because the cost of postage is already there, right?
Interesting.
Versus a specialized mailer. There are very good reasons to send specialized mailers when you have something of interest in the community. So there's a time and a place for that. But essentially, again, if you're already commissioning a glossy, nice 30% at least post-consumer paper, adding something to that or adding an insert or a brochure into that, right? You're able to make your money, make your money work more, and everybody gets it.
Well, and if the communication,
That go out.
Quarterly, seasonally.
but if the
so-
communication could be coupled with a limited incentive program, maybe targeted specifically at commercial gardeners.
Bingo. Yeah.
Skip the residential.
So we,
Even if they own it, how often are they using it?
Yeah.
Once a week,
It's-
once a month?
right.
It's the commercial guy that's using it, 12 hours a day.
One of the things we looked at, which is another challenge, is when we implemented this, I pulled it and we were like, okay, well, one of the ways we can do outreach is if you have a business license with us. Right? Because we can see anyone with a business license,
Yeah.
we have your
Yeah.
information.
And you aware that.
Yeah, exactly. And again, not throwing anybody under the bus, but the number of folks who operate elsewhere and get a business license with us, we don't go, we're not the business license police for things like this, although we do work with a consultant to find folks who are operating in the city and let them know that they need a business license. But I suspect there are a lot of gardeners who maybe didn't occur to them to get a business license with every city they're operating in, so.
But you might as well approach the ones that you do, that you
Yeah.
can.
Yeah, those are two really smart ideas. I think if we saw like a little bit of a rough scope around how those sorts of things could work,
Yeah.
it would be amazing.
Okay,
And with
I
a
think
focus on commercial.
we need to move on from this.
Yes,
We
sorry,
have some
yeah.
other important
Okay.
items and we're gonna run out of time. But if I could just reiterate what I am hearing from the CAP is that the direction would be to have staff conduct a study to understand what it would cost to do an educational campaign to homeowners to make them aware of the ordinance and that it is on them to enforce the ordinance. And then if we did do some kind of marketing campaign, whether we used our rec mailer that goes out to, and then also to do some study into rebates and exchanges and how effective those are. And then potentially the next step would be to do a mailer to our population to educate them, but also to try to somehow get these commercial landscapers motivated and incentivized to take advantage of rebates. I'm sort of having a hard time with the city financing rebates to commercial operators that are not necessarily Larkspur-based
Yeah.
businesses,
Yeah,
yeah.
That could be part of the deal, is that you
They
have to be a
register as a
Larkspur,
business.
have a Larkspur business license to be eligible for the incentive.
Oh, yeah, that our city manager would definitely make that up.
What's that?
our city manager would definitely make that a condition.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anytime you get anything as a business here, you get a
It might be
business
easy to
license,
have
if you ever want to
more
contract with us, et
landscapers, you know,
cetera.
clean up for the business
Um,
license.
Great, okay, so did I miss anything?
And
or
it- and
did-
it's, and it's an exchange program,
Okay,
and then it's an exchange program.
Yep.
You gotta turn in.
A swap,
order to
yeah.
get a-
Yeah, okay.
get it sent.
great.
Okay, so agenda is for a future CAF meeting. I think we'll work with you, Councilmember Margulies, to see how busy our next December meeting is. But in terms of staff time, it should be able to be prepared by December, but if there's other pressing items where, again, you know, we want to attend to other business. it could
Okay.
be at a
Perfect.
future meeting, okay.
All right, so that brings us on to 4.3, no, sorry, yeah, 4.3. This is the overview of the climate action plan work, the member prioritization, which is this handy dandy little quadrant that we handed out, so,
And I'm gonna put it on the screen as well.
Great.
So Jody, if we're referring to this piece of paper, it's on the screen shortly.
okay, so a mailer went out to everybody a couple of times asking people to send back to Shannon or Climate at Larkspur the top priorities that they felt would have the most impact and something that perhaps they, you know, have some experience with or felt that they could promote in their neighborhood. And we got 5 responses.
Yeah.
Are you gonna put up the tab that
Oh, yes,
then Katie created for us, our
Yes.
wizard on Google Sheets?
Only if it's helpful. I love the.
It's
the stuff really
helpful.
Helps too.
it's super
It's
helpful.
fantastic.
Move
So
the
we got
bar.
5 submissions. And I think Shannon's gonna share it on the screen, and Katie helped us aggregate all the submissions and bring together a list of all of them that were submitted, so. Oh, it's not easy to see on the screen, unfortunately, how many are there total?
Are there some more copies of this?
Yeah, a bunch more copies.
Thank you.
So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There were 12 different items submitted. That's a,
Yeah, basically 5 submissions, but amongst all those, there were 12 items selected across those 5 submitters. And that's what, a lot of them were doubly counted here, right? So,
actually 13, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Sorry, go
Okay,
ahead.
no, that's okay. So of those 5 submissions, what we were looking for was crossover. Were there any items that multiple people suggested were a priority? And the good news is we found 3 items that multiple people felt were a priority. So that was where we want to focus in on. And the 3 items are marked with X's in the quadrant. So once we had this information, Shannon and staff went back and looked at the quadrant, and so the quadrant on the other side talks about the different criteria for meeting one of the quadrants. And then if you flip it over, you'll see there are 3 items that have green X's next to them. Those are the 3 items that different submissions all came in prioritizing. So those were the areas. Then what I asked Shannon to do and what Shannon and staff did together was took all of the items that came back from our submissions and put them into a quadrant based on effort and impact.
Awesome.
So the ideal items are the ones that fall in the, if you want to call it, you know, the cherries, the ones that are low effort and high impact. Those are, you know, best scenario. And so we have one of those, which is LCTC1G, which is accommodate new electric vehicle charging stations in existing commercial parking lots. That one, and then of course we have 2 more up top that are renewable energy, C3B and M1. So the question is, from here, do we ask staff to go back and give us a timeline, and really give us, do we recommend to council that council directs staff to go back and create a timeline, an amount of effort involved and a cost to implement those 3 items?
I think also the other thing too is, so we were very thoughtful on where these fall, but you can take them, a lot of them, which doesn't surprise me for their level of importance. There's degrees you can do this, right? Because the language when the climate action plan was authored used words like often encourage, etc. So again, when I say that, I didn't mean like encourage, like guys do it, but like encourage can mean, education campaign across the counter. Encourage could mean a checklist or some kind of flex path, right? Where you are very much encouraged to do this. So there's levels of magnitude for this. So one of the things staff can do is also say, like, what would those levels of magnitude look like? And what could we do immediately? What could you do that wouldn't have cost? And what is the time money breakdown, particularly on the renewable energy. When we get the new community development director on board, again, Elise, I worked with her on this. We were already starting in this process. I was working with I've worked with the building department, but we can go and as we onboard somebody, et cetera, we can say like this would be essentially the game plan or one of the paths that we could take. In terms of any, these were not, do we still just want to talk about the three that were, Sarah, that were,
Well, that
talked about by multiple folks?
Yeah, I mean, to me, that was sort of our process that we outlined, how we were gonna go about identifying priorities, so that's what we've done here.
Yeah.
To the best of our ability, to give us a digestible set of actions to go after. And so I would like to get from CAF the affirmation or the agreement and consensus that it makes sense that these items are what we focus in on over the next 6 months and have staff focus in on over the next 6 months. In terms of understanding time, effort, and cost. Because I think the way I'm understanding this is what I would do is get direction from everybody here that yes, we agree, these are important items and impact is, I mean, maybe not the one that falls into the bottom right quadrant, right? That's a high effort, low impact, right? So perhaps we don't want to do that one, but perhaps we want to do the low carbon transportation item of implementing more EV infrastructure. This one calls specifically for commercial parking lots. I mean, I want to suggest that maybe we can extend the breadth of that. And in fact, we have somebody here who represents a lot of tenants and is looking to try to provide ways for tenants to charge and Reed came to me and had an idea of adding EV charging stations in some little islands that are up on Bon Air Hill. And so he drove me around and showed me the islands. The islands are owned by the city. But they are maintained by the landlords in the area, and we looked at 2 specific islands. One I felt seemed better suited, but I would certainly want all of you to go take a look at the islands and give some input, but possibility of partnering with the private, public and private partnering to build some infrastructure on that hill for some of our tenants that want to have EVs on that hill where it's not as easy to retrofit the buildings that were built a long time ago. And to get the, PG&E infrastructure in place. So I thought that was a great idea. And it certainly, it would not just benefit Reed's properties, that there are other landlords, specifically at one of the islands that we looked at that are in that, it's a circle, it's a Corta, which one was it, Reed? I don't
That
know.
was, I think it was Corto Ortega
Okay,
on that one.
okay.
There's islands all over Larkspur.
Do they have power? So
I don't know if there's actually power on the island. I know there is in the street.
Street lights probably nearby.
Yeah, there are street lights there. I mean, our long pole from the tenant's been working with PG&E, and then a lot of the buildings will say like of the 5,000, apartment residents in Larkspur, a lot of them are older buildings, so they don't have sufficient amperage. So one of the things I'm really grappling with right now is like electric appliances and how do we up the amperage to the building to accommodate that. So that's where I'm like super excited to get rid of gas stoves, although they're like inside. It's like, okay, well, that's liability and it's something we can work on. It's a little lower, but EV chargers and seem to take a little bit more. And under the California, I think, Right to Charge Act of 2017, that cost actually goes to the tenant that is requesting it.
Right.
So like somebody who's a temporary resident of the building probably doesn't want to shell out the money to up the amperage to the building. So that's where I was like, well, maybe there's a community approach to this that serves multiple buildings and landlords and property owners. Where we can help our.
And maybe it's an opportunity for the city and you to work with
Yeah,
MCE.
Absolutely, and I would love to
Get
do that.
MCE. to
And
do
also,
something
if
like-
there's something really high priority here, which this is just a suggestion, it's not, but you know, especially because this is a really activated community, you know, be happy to send one of our, volunteer one of our staff to talk about what we currently do, right? What the law currently is, because it says, like, when it says accommodate new electric vehicle charging station in existing commercial parking lots, you know, we know more than a lot of folks do, but what does that actually look like? What are the state mandates? Because we're accommodating, the state's requiring us to do a lot of this, even since our cap was like adopted.
Yeah,
And you know, it's really us not prohibiting it or discouraging it, et cetera. But what does it currently look, you know, we could have staff share, what does it currently look like? What are we required to do? How do we work with folks, and maybe talk a little bit more about process if it's of interest?
I
Um,
have a couple of thoughts I'd like to share.
Sure.
So you two know this, but maybe you guys don't know this, that rather than picking items off the existing climate action plan, what I pointed out was that there are two major efforts that have been made subsequent to our now 4-year-old climate action plan. The countywide EV acceleration strategy
Mhm.
and the countywide building electrification roadmap that took advantage of all the CAP knowledge and sort of upped the game, and each of those identified priority actions.
Mhm.
And I would like to suggest that we not limit ourselves exclusively to wordings and actions that are in our 4-year-old plan. And go through, the lists aren't long in either of those, go through and update our relevant actions, these actions on the sheet, to have the wording and the focus of these more recent studies that involve much broader stakeholder groups in our countywide plans. So I think there's one comment I'd like to make here. I think there's a refresh needed on here. Secondly, I wouldn't exclude any of these. The sample is so small, 5 respondents, that you could say, well, 2 people said the same thing, but the sample is so small. These are the top items that came up. So I would be cautious about, saying, well, just because 2 people pick this one, that's necessarily the top item. The other thing is specifically on the one about the charging. It's very clear from people that are all over the subject of accelerating EV. It's really all about adding additional charging at multifamily housing. It's not about adding more charging at parking lots, because the issue is that this huge portion of the population doesn't really have access to EV charging. If you're a homeowner, you probably have the possibility of having your own charger at your house. If you're a renter, you can't charge. And a lot of people aren't gonna take the risk that, well, maybe I can charge here and there. It needs to be close in.
Yeah.
So just as an example, if you were to look at that EV acceleration strategy, it's not gonna say at existing commercial parking lots. It's gonna focus in right on multifamily housing. Now, it could be at commercial property close to multifamily housing.
Like when I rented and I was right next to the TAM offices, because I was by Civic Center, and that's where I charged my car, because I had I didn't even have a parking spot in my
Most
multifamily
EV
apartment.
owners are homeowners. You
Yeah.
can plug in,
Yeah.
they park their car in their garage, or their driveway.
Park it up, plug it in
So,
overnight.
so I'm just saying, I think that one especially needs a little bit of wording update. But
We have in the asterisks based on your,
Yeah, I
feedback.
did ask Shannon to add,
To-
and I noticed that you only added the EV acceleration strategy, but there's also the.
electrification,
yeah.
electrification
Framework.
roadmap.
That those are 2 great suggestions. I don't know what's involved. It looks like, Shannon identified them as high effort, high impact. So I'm not sure because they're pretty extensive. But I like your suggestion that, you know, let's go back and revisit the items
Well,
that
at
were
least
chosen
about
and
checking.
see, yeah,
So
see how
another
they are impacted by those.
thing, a thought I just had is the city of Novato just completed their climate action
Yeah.
plan. They were
Approved
one of
it.
the last ones, but I haven't read through that tome front to
Yeah.
back. It was shared at MCEP that they had adopted it, et cetera. Our staff can look through that language and see if it's updated. And then I can talk to the consultant. We talk about the MCE staffer,
Yeah.
Christina O'Rourke, about doing some kind of refresh on our climate action plan to update some of these.
But
Without
especially
commissioning a
with the
whole
focus-
new process to, you know, do a
yeah,
new climate action
especially
plan,
with the
et cetera.
focus on these ones that floated up to the
Yeah,
top.
yeah, can I build on this too, because I think we're probably in violent agreement. I would just say, can I say it back to make sure I understand? Like, you're saying, take all of these. Look at the EV strategy and the building electrification, and essentially say, we already know directionally the items that we're interested in, but update the that's what you're saying, update the language within the sort of topic area that we've identified to make
Yes.
sure that it's the highest impact based on those strategies.
But-
Okay, thank you.
But there could be some things, since the countywide strategy and roadmap were looked at from a multi-jurisdictional area. There could be things that Larkspur could do that are high impact, that are beyond Larkspur. So like, for example, there may be an item in this area with others that says, join with the other jurisdictions to develop a countywide X, whatever the X is.
Mhm.
That's not gonna show up in Larkspur's climate action plan, because it was focused on Larkspur. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
So there could be some other subject areas in there that we might want to pick up in here, that it might be a low effort, high impact action to collaborate with the other jurisdictions on accomplishing X that isn't even mentioned in Larkspur's climate action.
Right, all the more reason to just take a look and refresh.
Yeah,
I guess something I just wanted to mention as a member of CAF is like, I feel very excited and glad that we went from an amorphous list of 250 items
Wow.
to a list of 12 here. Like, I think that's so huge. And it's like, this gives me a lot of peace as a program manager at heart. And so I think I'm aligned with the idea of weighing the language against the strategies we've mentioned, as well as potentially the Novato plan, if that feels of interest to staff.
It's just worth taking a look,
Yeah.
right? to
Right,
see-
and
to
I might
see based on the
argue-
point.
I mean, you all know I love the 2x2 framework. I think the 2x2 framework, if we're ready, can get. My vote would be that this evolves to yet another sort of visualization where we've identified all these because we think they're all important. But then we can stack rank them, and we only stack rank them so that we understand sequencing, right? And I think that's what you're driving at, right? Where it's like, it's
What
hard to
we
do all this at
prior-
the same time.
Right,
What
right. I
we-
mean, if we, the thing is, we have a small staff.
Totally.
And this is not their only job.
Right.
So what I'm trying to do is give them digestible direction to go after and say, okay, tell me what this is, how much time, energy, and money it's gonna take to do these things. So that we can then really make, you know, an effort to dive into one and get it done.
There are
So we-
two in particular I do want to call out though, as in terms of will we ever get to it, or just they're very different in the nature of what folks chose versus the other ones, and that is encourage a yellow school bus program. I work over at Rec. I see all of the drop-off lines, etc. I would love it if we had
Oh,
yellow
yeah.
school buses. I cry when I go to the East Coast and I see buses and we don't have any. But you know, that's something where it's been brought up in the community at large, like a number of times in years past, and Larkspur only has so much of a seat at the table. It is very expensive. Getting folks to use use a yellow school bus program. There've been trial programs that have had various levels of success, etc. I think that's gonna be a hard lift, especially for the city to lead on. So I just want to put that there in terms of if we rank it, like, will we get to it in the next 6 months? That one's a little bit unique. And then the other one, especially for folks who are in our BPAC community or like bicycling, or cycling, the high effort, low impact, you know, provide safe routes to the ferry landing and other transit facilities that encourage bicycle and pedestrian connections. I don't mean to denigrate alternative, modes of transportation there. It's just that's a small area, which is why I had it as low impact. There's a lot of different agencies that are involved depending on what the route is, who you're coordinating with, where the land is. There's a lot of work that's happened there. So that's also why I put that there as a unique one, where it wouldn't just be Larkspur being like, let's identify this and see if we have the money, etc. Doesn't mean it's not worthy, but it's an agency soup, it's a small area. It triggers a lot of different plans, and then the connectivity, particularly when you look at multimodal transportation, you don't want to put in a bike path to nowhere, right? Like you'd
Yeah.
want it to connect to other
Right.
things, and there's a lot of consideration. So those two are a little bit unique, whereas these other ones, follow a theme where both they can be far reaching, but there are smaller projects that could come out of them. A lot of it really does fall to the city, or the city being a leader on it. Yeah, Reed, sorry.
Like, kind of in the vein of the bicycles and the smart train. Is what do they call it, the last mile connector?
Mhm.
Is something that like keeps a lot of our employees from taking public transportation. Is that within the scope of this, like a EV shuttle or something, services?
It was on the cap, but it didn't make it to this short list, but that
Okay,
doesn't mean
sorry.
that that couldn't be a submission from you.
I know.
No, I see your point.
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
then I'll support that. I think that last mile is pretty important.
Yeah.
And again, that might be
You
something that
definitely
staff can
Yeah.
do some research on, because particularly with the
Yeah.
case example of Smart isn't the only public transportation. But there were trial programs for vouchers, for ride share vouchers for last mile. There were bike share programs that were put by Smart, et cetera. And there is some, Larkspur staff didn't lead on this, we coordinated, but there is some data and some lessons learned about how successful those were, how much money it took around last mile, because that's also something where whenever we like go out for a position, people will ask like, oh, you can just like take the smart train to City Hall, et cetera. I'm like, you can if you have an e-bike, or like if
Yeah.
you're a really good cyclist, but it doesn't go to downtown, and I don't want to say it shouldn't, but like our downtown, it goes to the ferry, right? And
Yeah.
it goes to a completely different part of town. So I hear you on that, where if you you work on North Magnolia, you work in,
Yeah.
you work in Bon Air, it's not quite there.
I think if I could just come
Yeah.
back to like what we're trying to do with this meeting, which is, we love the yay to these things, yay to getting them better language, yay to having a short list. I think the ask, if I understand correctly, is can we make this short list even shorter, with the understanding that we will get to all of these in due time, but we have to start somewhere and try to be really efficient about staff's time and our time. So in that spirit, I would be in favor of, as a next step, I mean, again, I don't wanna over volunteer staff's time, but like, if I were to be very, like, forcing myself to be very efficient, I would be in favor of choosing the two X's here that are above the line on high impacts as a starting point. Again, I hesitate to make it sound like we are not gonna do anything else, but as a starting point to say, with more clarity, a planned proposal on those tiers that you described, Shannon, so that this group is really clear on specifically LCT C1G with maybe a renewed focus on multifamily housing, to your point, David, which I think is a really good immediate change, less on the general commercial parking lots, but more multifamily housing. And then on the renewable energy side, REC3B, which, I mean, we talk often in other forums about the importance of moving into, like, replacing the natural gas appliances.
Well, that
So-
also works for me, because we're deep in looking at what we can do in terms of our own reach codes right now. And both of those, it's not the only avenue, right? But one of the main things would be looking if it's tier one, if it's flex path or whatever, how it impacts these two things. Right, which is a pretty immediate action, and to see how far we get, if we implemented, modified municipal code.
Right, but
Around
do you imagine that there would be recommendations outside the scope of the where the municipal code lands, or is that really the only?
I don't want to commit on the spot, but looking at RE C3B, consider requiring homeowners to replace natural gas appliances with high efficiency electric appliances at time of replacement where feasible. I could at least say like some of this would be captured if we adopted these codes, and then this would not be captured and be a separate project, right? If it wasn't. And have an idea of, especially the way that's worded, because that would, I guarantee if we, to your point, Katie, if it was like a really modest swap out where you don't even need a permit or something to replace certain appliances, that would be something we could note and share with CAF, right?
Right, and I
Um,
guess like maybe I'm getting overly ambitious here, but the kind of the reason why I'm obsessed with really landing a couple of these actions is so that like we as a team can then get very creative about what we can do to take this to its logical extreme. I feel like I'm a broken record in these meetings talking about it, but this city does so much, the reach codes will get us a certain, as far as we can. But I think if we commit to, in the next 6 months, we wanna push really hard on the community side too. It kind of encourages us to round out our tool set around how to actually move the needle on that, as opposed to just one thing. And kind of energize our focus on that one item for 6 months and really try to move it
Come up with a
farther.
success.
Yeah, farther than we would if we try to do a little bit on everything for 6 months, so. Just one girl's opinion.
I want to be mindful of folks' time. David, I don't know
Yeah.
if you, what you want to talk about. We have like 3 minutes, but we have on our agendas to do a summary of what comes out of these
And
meetings,
the
et
action items,
cetera.
Yeah,
The action items is maybe one action item that on these two, again, I don't want to speak for the CAF, but on these 2 items, staff would provide an update or provide a presentation or something more on these 2 items at the next meeting, or what do we want it to look like in terms of next steps? CAF thinking.
forum,
I said my piece, so you
Okay.
all
Uh,
agree or
2 months
disagree.
is a pretty long time away. I would hope that maybe there could be an update in advance of the next CAP meeting as a follow-up to this meeting. That the action could be, putting some more flesh on those 2 items. I could go with those 2 items.
Knowing full well that when we,
But the one has to, as you said, needs to focus on multifamily housing.
I think in scope of the focus on the 2 items, it's like doing the cross-referencing with this other strategies, making them as like robust and clear as possible. Accompanying with whatever plan, tiering plans.
With
Yeah.
the idea that something, with the review of those other 2 documents, something might pop up.
Exactly,
I
in
don't know.
scope for that, yeah.
But you guys, I think, would spot it. I mean, if there's something in there that's super compelling.
yeah.
Yeah.
As we reference the other 2 documents is what you're saying, yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, the thing that I sort of lean towards too, just is that there's that low impact, low effort, high impact item about encouraging installation of solar panels over parking areas on commercial projects and large scale residential developments. That also is really compelling to me as something I'd like to understand what the effort is involved. Because it does have high impact and it says it's low effort. So even though it wasn't it wasn't part of the cross section of the small data sample that we received, but we have to work with the data sample that we received. And I understand your, interest and encouragement to move forward with the other frameworks of adoption. I was thinking just from my perspective, for those, it would be taking those to council and asking council to adopt them as amendments to our 2030 cap plan, like we want to go beyond what the 2030 cap plan says, and we want to adopt these frameworks as amendments, and so we should be driving towards what's in them. That's how I was understanding what we could do that would, I don't know how, I asked.
You're saying with review of those countywide.
Yeah, that they would become part of our
I think
climate action plan
Lawrenceburg has
2030.
already adopted both.
Oh, we have?
Standalone, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Okay,
they were
my bad.
presented and they
Okay.
adopted.
Sorry.
So that's why I say they're fair game. We shouldn't limit
Okay,
ourselves
sorry,
just to
my
the
bad.
cap. We've already
Absolutely,
adopted
yeah.
it.
Okay, so then we'll reference those, cross-reference those, and then basically give direction to staff to give us some more understanding of what is the, effort and resource involved to home in on the 2 above the top quadrant items. And then do we want to stack rank, to your point, the rest, so that we have enough, yeah.
I mean, we should be chipping our way through these.
Yeah.
It's really just about focusing like these, I'm thinking of them as like sprints, like a sprint on this thing to try to do as much as we can.
Yeah,
And then a next sprint on the next 2 and a next sprint on the next 2. just so
yeah,
we're more
we wanna have like a backlog that we can pull
Yeah.
from.
Yeah.
Right, so we start making progress on one of these items, we're gonna pull another one in from the backlog. Do you guys feel that is, that makes sense?
Sure.
And
I would
can we
like-
count on you to help us stack rank these? Cause we,
Prioritize.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have one other thing.
Yes.
On this effort that we made.
Yes,
I spent some time looking through the current versions of the dashboard documents,
Yes,
and I have just a couple of very quick comments that I got.
okay,
Okay,
Mhm.
one is the action tracker is looking pretty good. I'm just saying, it looks good.
looks very good.
I have just one comment on it. The column that's called current status / notes.
Mhm.
I think it might say current status / corrective actions. Because one of the most valuable things this can have that's not on there right now is especially for the items that are in red.
Yeah,
What is
Do
the
we need to
corrective
do-
action to get them to yellow or green?
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, so I would do that on this. The other comment that I had is on the summary sheet, this one,
mhm,
which is great. But, you know, in the big picture, that's not a very good looking curve, right?
You gotta drive
And
that
what's
down.
missing on here right now is a narrative statement of how are we doing? A narrative statement, just do like a one paragraph, a short paragraph that says, just looking at this, we have kind of flattened out in our reductions. We need to redouble our efforts.
mhm,
We've identified a number of actions that are high priority or behind, and that's what staff is gonna focus on. What I just said, I believe should be on here as a narrative statement. Because for most people, you know, they don't even know really what to look on here. Okay, so some
Right.
are on track, some not, but what does that mean? And what's happening as a result? What are we doing about it?
mhm.
Right.
And so I would add a narrative statement to this, and I would change that one column name to
And
include corrective actions.
yes, and David, won't it be amazing when we've got the stack rank of all of these 12 items, when a newcomer comes to that tab, they read an amazing narrative statement and they see
Yeah.
CAF alongside our partners on the city council and in staff have identified this stack rank list, and we are moving forward very clearly. These are the corrective act, like suddenly we've given them a short list,
Yeah.
a narrative statement, and a way for them to engage,
Right.
right? So we can start pointing people to it to say, hey, for the next 6 months, we're really focused on the gas appliances thing. Here's what you can do. Like it ends up helping us actually achieve the actions.
Okay,
Love it.
that one other item I had, I'll make this really short.
I'm open to
minutes?
stay
Are you
for an
okay?
extra 5 minutes.
Yep, I'm good.
Not even,
Okay,
we're gonna make
okay.
it two.
okay,
Right.
Okay.
Two. Okay, so I actually brought up, this is about zero NOx. So the short background is that the Bay Area Air District passed in 23 two rules that say, starting January 1st, 27, that any newly installed water heater in the Bay Area cannot emit nitrogen oxide gas as part of its combustion. And in January 1st, 29, no space heater involved, newly installed in the Bay Area, can emit NOx. Okay, they passed this in 23. We're coming up on that first implementation date. It's just,
yeah.
less than a year and a half away.
Mhm.
2/3 of the current Air District board members, and it's a huge board made up of all the 9 Bay Area counties, 2/3 of them were not even on the board when the board adopted those rules.
Mm.
And so a lot of them are kind of wondering, what is this? Can we really do this? Is it gonna, is it feasible and so on?
Hmm.
So what's needed now is support from individuals, especially elected individuals and jurisdictions saying, hold the line, we want this to be implemented on time and so on. So another group I'm involved in, the Marin Electrification Council, met with Brian Colbert, our supervisor,
Mhm.
District 2, this district, who is our Marin County representative on the Air District Board
Mhm.
just 2 weeks ago, yesterday. And we discussed this. And he's all in favor of holding the line. He's concerned about minimizing economic impacts on people. Currently at the Air District Board, they're considering what they're calling some common sense exceptions. That will, so that if you're in a difficult installation, it's gonna be particularly economic hardship, whatever it is, that you get an exception, you don't have to do it. It's not everybody all at once, it's about 5% per year,
Mhm.
based on 20-year life average year. But the point is, if you kick the can down the road, it's not gonna look any different a year later, or 5 years later. We gotta get going on this. If you cut nitrogen oxide, you also cut greenhouse gases.
Mhm.
And buildings are the number 2 source of greenhouse gases after transportation. It's about 25% of all our greenhouse gases, so this is a big deal. So I had mentioned at the city council meeting a couple of weeks ago that we should be talking about this at the city council. And I mentioned that I was involved in preparing a draft resolution that jurisdictions could adopt, and also a draft supportive letter that individuals, especially elected individuals. And I have copies of those here with me tonight. And so I'd like to put them in your hands, and anyone else. I've got 6 copies if you're interested. And and the time frame for letters of support is really now. The Stationary Sources Committee, which is the committee that's looking at this within the board, Brian Colbert is on that committee. So he actually has a voice. If he hears from Marin jurisdictions and Marin elected officials, Brian, we want to keep these dates. Don't kick this down the road. He's going to respond to that. He's representing Marin County, right?
Yeah.
If we don't, he might go with the flow of other peoples that have a louder voice and say, let's kick it down the road. So it's a big deal if we actually send stuff to Brian and also to the full board, to the air district, saying, please hold these dates with common sense exceptions that, you know, were needed. So anyway, I will bring this to the council as well, just so you know. But I thought, hey, we're here with the Climate Action Firm. Why not? Anyone want a copy of these?
Yeah,
Sure.
please.
Please, and just so you know, this is for single family homes only, these.
Yes,
20
only applies to single family. homes.
I was just thinking about this one.
It was a lot. Actually, like, the cost of the heat pump
give you
wasn't
one
different than the gas.
This-
or-
Do you have a,
This is-
do you have a
the
digital version?
challenges,
I
like,
can send you.
Just email it to me.
Okay.
need
That's
for the
better,
18
and I can
to
forward it
25.
to anyone on staff who needs it.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. So like
perfect.
tens of thousands of dollars that costs.
Yeah.
But the units themselves are
Right.
in spec of the old.
With that, do we want to adjourn the meeting? Do we want to?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you
Sorry.
for joining us, Jody.
Yeah, easy to
Come on.
Big and bad.
Thank you, sir.
So-
CEP charging, especially.
The good news